Okay, welcome to BC Academic Libraries Section Winter Event 2020 on combating racism and addressing racial issues in academic libraries. My name is David Gill, and my pronouns are he, him, his, and I identify as a South Asian Canadian. I am the MC, and my fellow BCALS Continuing Education coordinators, Reba Ouimet and Melissa Smith, will be moderating the chat. If you have any questions or technical issues, please direct questions to them. If you'd like to live tweet the event, please use the hashtag BCALS2020 and follow our Twitter. Well, coming up for the topic for the winter event, we were considering a few areas to focus on. We reflected on the 2019 BCALS survey of our members, and we saw that they were interested in professional development related to EDI, social justice, and practical concepts. It was a couple of months after BCALS released a statement and call to action where we declared our support for Black communities, Black library workers, and all those protesting police violence and anti-Black racism in Canada, the United States, and the world. The topic was still discussed, but it was not on the news 24/7 as it was during the middle of the summer. We read this sentence of the statement. Such issues and services do not occur in isolation, and sustained discussion and action in regard to them is a necessary part of the struggle for a more just and equitable world. This sustained discussion and action is why we are here today. We want to make sure this topic is front and center in our actionable work. I'd like to thank the panelists and the lightning talk speakers. If we could go to the schedule. Oh, sorry, actually. During this event, we'll not have any live questions for the panelists, but there will be an opportunity for questions for the lightning talk speakers if you like. We'll also send a feedback survey on Monday, so please take the time to fill out and improve our events. So for the schedule today, we'll have the line acknowledgement, a panel discussion, lunch from 12 to 12:30, Pacific time, lightning talks, and the BCALS business meeting. I'd like to thank the panelists and the lightning talk speakers for contributing your emotional and intellectual labor for this event. We really appreciate it. One of our panelists, Ashley Edwards, will be delivering the land acknowledgement. Ashley, are you able to, oh, you can talk now.
Yeah, sorry, I wasn't able to unmute myself. I want to thank the BCALS organizers for inviting me here today, not only as a panelist, but to open up our time with a land acknowledgement. As a new librarian and recent graduate, it's very humbling to be invited to speak on such an important topic and one that I consider myself still very much a learner. So I'm going to open today by saying Tanshi Kiowao, Ashley Edwards, mon nom, Chilliwack, British Columbia, Ochinia, Maka, Burnaby, British Columbia, ni weekend. On Michif, Dutch, P Scottish, Nia. So what I shared with you is a simple greeting in Southern Michif, which is one of 3 dialects spoken by the Métis communities within Canada and the United States, or what we refer to as Turtle Island. And what I said was, hello everyone, my name is Ashley Edwards. I am from Chilliwack, but live in Burnaby now. I am Métis, Dutch, and Scottish. What I am still in the process of learning is how to include that Chilliwack is located within the heart of Stalo territory, and Burnaby is located on the homelands of the Tsleil-Waututh, Stalo, Keekite, Chemainus, Musqueam, Coquitlam, and Coquitlam First Nations. I'd like to also add here that I use she, her pronouns. The image that I'm sharing with you today is of Thithlake. She is located on the left in the image, and next to her is Squamay. I grew up in Chilliwack, British Columbia, calling these mountains Chiem and Doghead, although I later learned that Doghead's official name is Lady Peak. And I like to share this picture as part of my land acknowledgement because to me, these mountains represent home. Thithla Kay left her husband, Mount Baker, in Washington to return to Stalo territory. And with her, she brought, taking her place along the Fraser River to watch over the people and the salmon. Next to her is her dog, who came with her, and hidden below, in this image, it's hard to see, but she's got 3 little peaks, and those are her 3 daughters. Thithla Kay is also known in Stalo stories as the Mother Mountain. And when you drive down Highway 1 into the Fraser Valley, you get a really amazing view of her. It has a double meaning for me since my mother is still in Chilliwack. And so the mountain not only reminds me of my home, but of my mom, who's going to watch this later. So hi, Mom. As we gather today in this virtual room, I want to also acknowledge that we are able to, by the use of SFU servers, which are located on Burnaby Mountain. Burnaby Mountain is the territory of Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh First Nations. Virtual land acknowledgements are new to many of us this year, and I want to recognize that we come together today to do this work around anti-racism by means of a colonial institution. And I encourage everyone who is watching today or watching the recording at another time to think about where you are, who lived there before you did, and how you came to be on that territory. Following some Indigenous protocol, I'm going to take this time to also share a bit about my educational and professional background as a form of establishing my accountability on these topics. So I am the Indigenous Curriculum Resource Term Librarian at Simon Fraser University. The center is being developed to provide faculty with support as they work towards indigenizing and decolonizing their pedagogy and curriculum. For some, this will also mean learning about Indigenous peoples and history and culture as part of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Part of this learning, not only for faculty, but for all Canadians, is understanding that the land that we occupy today was not empty, waiting to be discovered, but home to diverse and sovereign nations. Learning that has been a part of my journey of personal reconciliation with my own Indigenous heritage, as well as part of my work at SFU, not only as the ICRC librarian, but also as a member of the Decolonizing the Library interest group and working group. My interest in Indigenous librarianship and indigenizing education is a mix of personal and professional. As mentioned above, I grew up in Chilliwack, which is Stalo territory, yet it wasn't until I began working at the Stalo Research and Resource Management Center as a library technician that I learned anything about the Indigenous history of that area. My time with the SRRMC opened my eyes to the inequity of library practices in relation to Indigenous peoples and topics, particularly around subject headings and classification. It also made me start asking questions about my own, more questions about my own Indigenous heritage. I had grown up knowing my dad was Indigenous and Dutch, but I didn't know from what community. And it wasn't until about 2016, after his mother passed, my Oma, that I learned that her family is Métis from the Red River settlement area of Manitoba. His father comes from Holland. My mother's family is Scottish, having settled in Nova Scotia and Ontario. So my learning and exploration of these topics it often for me muddles that line between personal and professional interest and connections. And I start with this because my time at the SRRMC, apologies, taught me to view the world around me differently, to see how stories and information can be held not only in books, but in the mountains like the one I am sharing with you, trees and animals all around us. As a librarian and previously as a library technician, I thought a lot about how to bring land-based storytelling to our traditionally text-based perfection and collections. In her book, Indigenous Story Work, Kwam Kwam Helam, you may know her as Dr. Joanne Archibald, as she talks about the power that comes with knowledge and how it's an Indigenous practice to share what you have learned. Her words resonate with me as I reflect on how to make my land acknowledgement meaningful by providing a call to action or a compelling statement. And I believe that this the notion of knowledge and power and sharing power is really what compels me to be here with you today and inform how the work that I do in my current role and hopefully all other roles I have in the future. So I want to say thank you, and in the ways that I learned when I was at Stalo, I lift my hands up to everyone who's in this virtual circle with us today, and may we do great work and have amazing conversation. So Marcy, thank you in Michif, and I will turn it back over to David.
Thank you, Ashley. Along with Ashley, we have 3 other panelists. Norda Bell, the Associate Librarian at York University Scott Library. David James Hudson, the Associate Librarian on the Information Literacy team at University of Guelph. And Maha Kumaran, the Education Liaison Librarian at the Education and Music Library at University of Saskatchewan. So Norda, can you please tell the audience what type of work you do on the topic of anti-racism and addressing racial issues in academic libraries?
Okay, can you guys hear me? Yeah, okay, great. I would like to follow in on Ashley's statement. I would like to acknowledge that I am, as an immigrant from Jamaica, I am a settler and I am working from home. On land that is located on the traditional territories. This is in Ontario, on the Wendat, Hodina, Stoney, and the Anishinaabe people, and the treaty land of the Williams Treaties First Nations and other Indigenous people, including the Chippewas of Georgina Island. And so as an immigrant and as a settler and as a Black woman, I do also grapple with my role in my relationship with the land. My work in equity, diversity, and inclusion, EDI, includes being the book review editor of the International Journal of Information, Diversity, and Inclusion. This is an open access journal, and I want to shamelessly plug. I'm always looking for book reviewers, guys. So look out for our next issue in January that I've been, I guess you've inspired me, this panel has inspired me to perhaps include a section on anti-racist books. So I have to start working on that, but look out for that for our next issue. So earlier this month, my chapter on professional development in EDI was published in a book edited by Karen Daly and Nadia Katie. It's titled Humanizing LIS Education in Practice, Diversity by Design. I recently co-organized a Learning Circle professional development series for York University archivists, librarians, and library staff. It was an internal professional development opportunity. It was for us to come together in a talk-in circle to learn about Indigenous history and cultural practices and knowledge in respect to research and scholarship. But it was also to challenge participants to reflect on our responsibilities and create a respectful relationship with our Indigenous communities, both individually and collectively. So as part of the series, I co-organized with my colleagues Rosa Orlandini and Stacey Allison Casson a webinar discussion. Perhaps you were involved. Perspectives on openness, on honoring Indigenous ways of knowing. And I want to call out the York scholars, Deborah McGregor, Alan Corbiere, and Sean Hillier on their discussion on Indigenous approaches to open scholarship. And this was in coordination with Open Access Week. I'm also the library's, the York University Library's affirmative action representative. And so I actively advocate for greater representation in the libraries, and I'm trying to advance DEI, EDI issues in the library.